at your deathbed, you've lived a film.
We don't come to Earth for a long time. We come for a very short amount of time.
For most people, In the Sidelines was the second film.
The hell with it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to become a writer.
For whatever reason, and whether you didn't have the courage or the curiosity or the confidence, it never came to be.
We finished training the horses, and we started the journey.
And the purpose and the reason we do the do
Must is just who you are.
This is your life.
Seize the day.
is to narrow the distance between those two films.
So today, I wanted to share the story of my journey, which began in the most unlikely place. The most significant, important sign in my life came to me when I was totally and completely sound asleep in bed. It came to me in the form of a dream. It was a white room with tall white walls, warehouse windows, concrete floor, and a mattress on the ground with white sheets. I would visit this room, this very simple, easily dismissed room, every night for months while I slept. And one day, I brought it up to a friend and I said, I've been having this crazy dream, this recurring dream about this weird room. Like, what do I do about it? And she asked me the question that changed my life forever. She said, have you ever thought about looking for your dreams in real life? No, of course not. It was absurd. Who would go looking for a white room from their dreams in real life? But then I started thinking about it, and I thought, that's kind of awesome. I would like to know if this room from my dreams exists somewhere out in the world. And so I started asking the question, when you decide to look for your dreams in real life, where do you go? Craigslist. That's exactly where you go. I felt totally ridiculous. Typing into the box, I don't know, what do you type? What are you looking for? I knew what the place looked like, but I had no idea if it was going to be a home, if it was going to be an office. I didn't even know if it was going to be in San Francisco, which is where I lived. I kept looking on Craigslist. I didn't tell anybody about my bizarre search. I thought it was too strange. And one day, after weeks go by, this little tiny thumbnail, I'm just scrolling. This little tiny thumbnail goes up the screen, and there, in a tiny little box, is an image of my dream. I don't know how these things happen. I have no idea, but it was it. It was the dream. And of course, there was an open house the very next day. I walk into the space. Of course, it's exactly the way that I thought it would be. And I was very caught off guard to find a dozen other apartment hunters in the white room from my dreams. So I quickly walked up to the woman who was showing the place in San Francisco fashion. Everyone's got their applications ready. I filled mine out, and I wrote a check, and in an experience that I can only describe as totally out of body, I just gave her this paperwork, and it felt complete. Like I had done my part. I had shown up. I have chills going down both my legs. I got a call from her later that day. I got the place. 2 weeks later, it became my home. This photo was taken on my very first night there when I arrived with 2 suitcases and the dog. I sat on the floor, and I started to panic. What had I done? What was I doing? And I literally said out loud in the middle of the white room from my dreams, why am I here? And as clear as day, the space said back to me, you're here to paint. I woke up the next morning and I went to the art supply store. I got a couple supplies and a few small canvases to get started. I went back to the white room from my dreams and I started painting non-stop for months, waking up at 3, 4, 5 in the morning. I couldn't stop. I just couldn't stop. What is the source of this energy? What is it? I don't know. But it just was flowing through me. This is my studio. This is the place that I like to say there are no right answers, no guarantees, and anything and everything can happen. I started working at scales that totally freaked me out. This is a huge piece of photo paper I found in the garbage. Put it up on the wall, painted it in a night. When big started to get easy, I moved to small. These are 30 small paintings I worked on for a week, and I only liked one of them. That's how it works. At the end of 4 months, some friends of mine came in, pulled everything off of the walls, and took it all away for something I never could have seen happening. They moved it all into a gallery, and I had my first solo show showing 60 pieces of my work. The only catch during all of this is that I still had a job. I was working over 40 hours a week down in Palo Alto with a startup. We were trying to redesign email. It was a mission to go up against Apple and Gmail and fix this problem that we all have, hating email. I hate email. You guys probably hate email unless you use Mailbox, and hopefully you love email. It was something I was really passionate about, and on top of that, I got to work with amazing people. It felt not unlike climbing some sort of a mountain with like a band of brothers and sisters, and you're all in it together. And like the mission that we were gonna like take over the big guys and do amazing work on the iPhone, it felt so audacious that it rallied everyone. We were so excited. Around this time, a friend showed me a TED Talk by Stefan Sagmeister, artist and designer working out of New York. I see some heads nodding. His work is fantastic. He gives this TED Talk where he talks about jobs, careers, and callings. They're different, he says. A job is something done 9 to 5, typically something done for pay. A career is a system of advancements and promotions, usually involving rewards like an extra day of vacation, higher salary, and maybe an upgraded business card. There's a lot of incentives and motivations to move you through a system. Seth Godin calls these dancing monkey treats in the way that only Seth Godin could. A calling is something intrinsically motivating, something that you would do regardless of pay. And I started to look at these, and I started thinking, well, which of these do I have? And I think this is a really great question. And I ask you, which of these do you currently have with your job, your hobbies, your projects, paid, non-paid? Like, where would things map if you dropped them across this spectrum? And I think this exercise, while very simple, is really important because it's not always likely that our jobs or even our careers are necessarily our callings. And I think that's really important to identify. The great thing about this, which the more I delved into it, the more I got really excited, there's not a right answer here. You kind of go, oh yeah, get the calling, get away from the job and the dancing monkey treats. No, actually. I started stumbling across these beautiful stories, like the author T.S. Eliot. Did you guys know he was a banker in London? Did you know that Keith Haring was a busboy, and the other, Toni Morrison, was an editor at Random House? I mean, go on and on. Einstein, he worked in the patent office for 7 years while he hatched his theory of relativity. Jobs can create beautiful structures for your callings. Let's not get confused, like we have got to have money if we want to live on this planet. And you cannot be thinking about your calling if you don't have money to put food on the table for your family. I think that's an often missed point when we talk about this kind of work. One of my favorite stories as I've been kind of going through all of this has been learning about Philip Glass, the composer, one of the most significant composers of our time. Philip Glass says, while working, I suddenly heard a noise and looked up to find Robert Hughes, the art critic of Time magazine, staring at me in disbelief. But you're Philip Glass! What are you doing here? Well, it was obvious that I was installing his dishwasher, and I told him that I would soon be finished. But you're an artist, he protested. I explained that I was an artist, but that I was sometimes a plumber as well, and that he should go away and let me finish. Around this time, I also picked up Picasso's biography by Arianna Huffington. It's fantastic. And in it, she talks about how Picasso's life and his art began to merge. And she said, the more I learned about his life and the more I learned about his art, the more the two converged. It's not what an artist does that counts, but what he is, Picasso was known to say. But Picasso's work was so thoroughly autobiographical that what he did was what he was. This was so beautiful to me. I just kept reading this line over and over and over again. Who you are and what you do, who you are and what you do, they're all one and the same. And it led me to a hypothesis. What if our jobs are our careers and our callings? What if they are all one and the same? What if you no longer know the difference between being at work and not being at work? Because you do the work because you are breathing, you're living, it flows out of you. It's how you understand the world. This is about the time that my brain exploded. I thought this was so cool, and whatever it was, I wanted to find it. February 2013, you just heard a beautiful note from Gentry, who I worked with. We were launching the app Mailbox, and every single goal that we set for that product launch, we'd been working quietly for like a year. We exceeded everything, every single one, just blew it out of the water. And I looked around at that room. I remember there were champagne bottles and like homemade treats from the families and kids who were, fueling us for the day. It was a moment that I will guard as one of the highlights of my life. And it was also the moment that I was first really truly introduced to the crossroads. And this is the story that I want to share with you today. This is a tool that I've been using to make big decisions, little decisions, every decision. And it doesn't just happen once. It's not like you come here on February 2013 and you pick it away and you go. It unfortunately doesn't work like that. I think that there are two paths in life. These are them. And you arrive here over and over again throughout your life. It's a recurring choice. It's a constant commitment. And it's really hard work. Should. This is how the world wants you to show up. You should do this. You should do that. Sometimes the requests are really small. They're seemingly innocuous things that are very easily accommodated. You should read that book. You should check out that blog post. Other times, should can be large, oppressive systems of thought that seek to convince people to live their lives differently. When you choose should, there's lots of rewards. The road is very smooth. They make it worth your while. And often, it's a pleasant journey. Must is different, totally and completely different. Must doesn't have options. You have no other choices. Must is just who you are in your gut level. What you believe, what you want to do, what you're drawn to, what you don't want to do. It's all of the things that are you. There's this great Dr. Seuss quote, there's no one who's more youer than you. How does it go? You are the only you of you. It's great. That's it. Must is you. Must is inexplicably you. And to choose it, to choose must, is the greatest thing that we can do with our lives. And it sounds fantastic, right? Great. It sounds amazing. Let's do it. Jobs, careers, and callings to all be one and the same. And it is fantastic. And the question I ask you is, what are you being called to do? Not up here, but here. What are you being called to do? Where does that journey lead you? Where are your dreams leading you? Literally, maybe you're having a recurring dream too. So I took all of these thoughts because I was, working alone in my studio every day, painting by myself after being with a team for years. It gets kind of lonely. And I thought maybe I'll share some of the things that I'm doing out with the world. So I put together a little manifesto about some of the stuff I was learning. And I put it on medium.com. This is the post that you all found. And I put it in, April 8th, 2013. I published it. This little thing went bananas on the internet. I don't know, we all share stuff, right? Like, this is what I had for breakfast. This is where I'm standing. I'm by the teepees. I'm at the 2 lectures. I put this thing online, and it went all over the internet. Within 2 weeks, it was tweeted to over 5 million people. It was read by over 300,000. And it was popping up everywhere from Bloomberg to Fast Company. As a former IDEO designer, I quickly asked 3 kind of core design thinking questions. The first, why? Why did people care? What was going on here that inspired them to share it? What was the pain that this was solving for them in a very real way? And finally, how do we do more? How do we help more? Do. What can we do? And beyond me, who else can help? Who wants to help? What does this mean? I started talking with people on social media, at events, in my studio. I had coffee, and we just talked. We just talked like we're talking right now. And I found that across all the people I talked to, it boiled down to this one essential problem in one sentence. I can't believe we're here. One sentence. The challenge, it's this. All too often, people feel like they're not living the fullness of their lives because they're not expressing the fullness of their gifts. People are in pain, and they would do just about anything to make it go away, like take Myers-Briggs tests and work with coaches, do all kinds of things to get closer to understanding what they need to do with their life. And I found that people would do just about anything, but they just don't know what to do. There's this great Mark Twain quote. He says, "The 2 most important days in your life are the day you were born and the day you find out why." I don't think enough people know why. I don't know, and sometimes I'm an optimist. We talked about this last night at dinner. I sometimes think, like, what would it look like if every single person right here in this room was like chasing down that must like it was the last train out of town? Like, what would be different? What would we see? Sometimes I'd like to think there'd be like new colors in the world, or like we would maybe be living on different planets. I don't know, but I think it's the natural way of things. and I get terribly excited about it. So it's great. Must is great. So why don't we choose it every day? Why isn't it so obvious and so easy? Well, all too often we are buried in this world of shoulds. We are like 10 million feet deep in shoulds, just trying to shovel our way out. It's really hard because these shoulds come from really personal places. Choosing must is an everyday process. You're constantly scrubbing away the shoulds. You're constantly trying to get rid of them. And it can take months, years, an entire lifetime to arrive at a pure place of must. Must raises questions that are scary and without an easy answer in sight. These are just a couple of the ones that I heard in my studio. How might I grow within the company that I love? Oh my gosh, do I have to quit my job? How do I explain any of this to my boss? What if I am the boss? How do I create a safe space to explore within my existing reality? How will I pay the rent? These go on forever and ever and ever. These are the 4 biggest fears and what some people do about them. The first is time. I can't tell you how many people tell me, oh, I'll make time when the kids are off to college, or, oh, I'll make time when things settle down at the office. When is that? When is that, guys? Full stop. We make time for what we want. That's it. And I would say that if you think that you want something, but you aren't doing it, consider the possibility that you don't actually want those things. One of the tools that I've used is Notecards and Pushpins, like from the drugstore. I have them all over my apartment, and some of them are filled with things that I want. They can be wild things, weird things. Like the other day I wrote a saltwater lap pool that I never have to maintain. I don't know. It's on the wall. I think that sometimes knowing what we want is the hardest part. Getting it, having a strategic action plan to get there, like we're pretty well equipped to make things happen and get things ducks in a row, but just tapping into this place can be really difficult. The second tool that I use is a timer. Sometimes people say like, I've got 5 kids, they're all in school, I've got the mortgage, I don't have time. I don't know, do you have 10 minutes? What if you just put aside 10 minutes every day just to like sit in a room and think about your idea? I think that would actually cause change over time. For me, it's 23. Why? Because I like the number 23, it's kind of fun. I set the timer and I paint every day for 23 minutes. That's it. Some days it feels like I'm never gonna get that done, and other days I get it done really quickly. That's time. Money. I don't think you can talk about really following your dreams if you aren't really talking about money. I can't afford to choose it. I can't afford it. Money is an interesting thing. It can buy you a suit, a sweater. It can buy you a car. The value of all of these things is quite obvious. The far more interesting use of money, and where I think things start to get really exciting, is when you use money to buy time. Money could buy you an hour. It could buy you a babysitter. It could buy you a weekend. It could buy you a couple of months off. Some of the wealthiest people I know are figuring out how to use their time. Age. This is one of my favorites. I had a 31-year-old woman in San Francisco say, I'm totally past my prime. I'm going to let some of the younger kids take it from here. This section is for her. I have a little note here. Did you all know that Vincent van Gogh was a businessman until his late 20s? He picked up a paintbrush at the end of his 20s, painted over 2,000 works of art in the next 10 years. That's 20s. Leonard Cohen, the musician, the writer, he started off as a totally broke, struggling poet. Moved to New York 1932, I believe. When he was 32. And at the age of 33, he switched from an author and being a poet to making music. Leonard Cohen, 33. 40s. Leonardo da Vinci made work for decades before he got his first big break at the age of 47. Julia Child. She wandered around forever, trying to figure out what she was going to do. She published The Art of French Cooking at the age of 51. Laura Ingalls Wilder. You all might know her as the author of The Little House In the Big Woods, which we know as Little House on the Prairie. She published that story when she was 64. Nelson Mandela, elected the president of South Africa at the age of 75. Thomas Edison invented the telephone at the age of 84. IDEO, international design firm IDEO, just hired a 91-year-old designer to help them specialize in designing for the elderly. And a woman at the age of 101, her name is Grandma Moses, picked up a paintbrush for the last 30 years of her life because her arthritis was hurting her crochet. She began painting, and now you can find her work in the New York Museum of Modern Art and around the world. When will the time be right to honor who you are and what you are here to do? The last reason that people don't choose must is really scary. I call this ultimate vulnerability, or total failure, absolute humiliation in front of all your friends and family, complete abandonment, and guaranteed death. You guys, if you decide to go out on your own and do some of the things that people have been talking about this weekend, it's really hard, and you go it alone. You go it alone. These shoulds come from places that are real. And when you say yes to must, you're saying no to who your mom says you should be, who your dad says you should be, who generations of people in your family believe that you should be, the culture that you grow up in, who you should be. That's really hard, and it takes time. Choosing must is an attack on should. And it takes time to deal with all of those shoulds. The more you deal with them, though, the easier it gets to see must. The stronger you get, the easier that decision becomes over time. You have to be ready what this means for your relationships, not just with people, but also with places, with groups, with the things and places that raised you. This is a really simple technique. I find it works quite well. Get a piece of paper, number it down the side. At the top, write, what am I so afraid of? List it all out. They're all going to laugh at me. I'll be all alone forever. They're going to throw apples at me when I'm on stage. Write all those things down, get them out there, and then walk yourself through one by one. Am I really not going to be able to afford my rent? Am I really going to be all alone? This list, while it might seem silly, is the greatest, largest amass of stuff that's standing in your way from choosing must. So let's say you want to choose must. You've done the hard work. You've gotten your ducks in a row. You're ready to do it. You're ready to make the leap, as so often people say. If you're anything like this guy that I met with in my studio a while back, he leaned over and he said, but what if I don't hear the call? I want to choose it. I want to do it. I'm so excited. Everything's ready. Now what? What a great question. What a great question. I say, start off with your mom. Call mom, or someone who knew you when you were a kid. So often, our must is rooted in our childhood. It's something that we did very freely. We gave it away to everyone, right? We're putting on plays. We're running around in doodlebug farms. I don't know, you're making performances on pogo sticks. None of this was motivated by anyone but you. And I have a feeling that if we go back to that place, we can find kind of clues or traces that will remind us of perhaps what's seated most closely to our must. This is a 5-year-old girl named Sophie, and she comes in and paints in my studio. She's just amazing. I actually had her come in a week ago. I just told her mom, I said, I just need to be around Sophie's energy. It's raw, it's naive, it's unfettered, it's so beautiful. And I think that's what's so great about so many of the speakers here today, getting up and speaking, and this whole week. It's incredible to hear the rawness, the realness. There's nothing between you and me. We're just talking, sharing in a very transparent and real way. I think that's what it's like with our childhoods. The other end of the spectrum, write your own obituary. A woman named Roz Goldfarb was 33. She was living in London. She sat down and she wrote her 2 obituaries. The first one that she wrote was the life that she had. She was a management consultant, living big life, made great money, had it all. The second obituary was for the life that she wanted to have. It was based on the lives of the people around her that she respected and admired. She finished writing her second obituary, stood up from the table, quit her job, and decided to row across the Atlantic Ocean in a single canoe as a woman for the first time ever. She has since rowed across almost all of the oceans around the world. at the age of, I think, in her 30s. This is incredible. The 2 obituaries. It sounds a little creepy. I think it's very interesting. And I would actually be curious if anybody posts theirs, what they would say. The next thing, solitude. We can't talk enough about solitude. We are so connected all the time. Solitude is so important to getting to the truth of hearing our own voice. About 2 years ago, I took about a month off, and I got a little place, this place, in the middle of the rice paddies in Bali. I was pretty much alone for 30 days, off my phone, off of technology. It's a really amazing way to reconnect with yourself, and this isn't a new thing. People have been going on walkabouts and vision quests, going on pilgrimages all throughout time. We even heard yesterday, Adele talked about James Turrell going into these spaces with Robert Irwin just to reconnect to their voices. Solitude doesn't have to mean you go to Bali. It can also just mean putting your phone away. I did this the other day before I went to the museum. I just put this is duct tape, so it was very difficult to get off. And I just wrote listen instead, and because I needed my phone. Solitude can happen in a lot of ways. Partner, we are not alone. Me and us, ultimately, we are all connected. I love, Ken talked about the connectedness of the garden on Thursday night. And the story of the redwood trees is a beautiful one to me. It explains this so eloquently. Did you know a redwood tree, their roots only grow about 10 feet deep, but they grow very vast and wide? A redwood tree cannot stand on its own. It would never be able to handle the strength of the winds. But together, because their roots are intertwined, they all hold each other up. We cannot do any of this alone. And while it might feel inherently selfish to pursue your calling, especially when it costs so much, I think it's the greatest thing for all of us when you choose it. Ronan, he's my 5-year-old friend. He came into my studio one day and he said, Elle, have you ever made a mistake while painting? He was terrified. I said, yeah, Ronan, everything you see around you is a mistake. And he said, whoa, mistakes are so beautiful. Let's go paint 1 billion million mistakes. Listen to Ronan. Finally, it's not enough to reach the treasure. One must bring it back. Share your work. Share your must. I want to know what you guys are making in your own white rooms from your own dreams. I want to know the stuff that's coming out of you, up out of you, unavoidably because it has to. I want to live in that world where we're all making, like these redwood trees, holding each other up. Share your work. In a particularly serendipitous moment, wow, we're going to end with emotion and start with emotion. I wasn't planning on sharing this, but some stuff kind of lined up in the last 24 hours where I was able to. After I posted that Medium article, I kept thinking about that third question, how do we do more? Especially as someone who loves social media and loves the power of the internet, I kept thinking, what do we do? How can we help more people? And I started just writing all these notes down. This is about age, fear of abandonment. I started just capturing all of my fears, everything that I was experiencing in my studio, in this book, and when people would come over, I started sharing it with them. And I guess just last week, right before I came here, I painted the last page. I sent it off to New York. And I just, wow, I don't even have words right now. I sent it off to New York, and they're going to make it into a book. And it's going to get out into the hands of more people and help more people. And I was thinking about share your work this morning, what story I wanted to tell. And just this morning, I got a link from the publisher. They're really fast. They said, well, your book is all painted and finished, so we're going to launch this sucker on April 8th, which, of course, is the 1-year anniversary from when I wrote the post on Medium. The universe is so cool. And I haven't talked about this at all. I've been working on it because I didn't really know what it was going to be. I'm not a writer. I don't know what I'm doing. Do any of us know what we're doing? I've just been throwing things at the wall, and I just got a link this morning to all of the book pages on the internet where you can buy it. And I thought, well, that's awesome, because I'm here and I want to share it. And so today it kind of became real for me. I think when we work on things on our own privately, it's scary to share your work and put yourself out there. And so I jumped onto the internet. I asked how many people were here. I heard there were 100, and I bought the first 100 books. So I have to get your addresses. I'm going to quickly throw up a site at choosemust.com, and you can put your mailing addresses in there. And when I get the books on April 8th, you guys are going to be the first ones to get them. Thank you. Thank you. The last story I want to share, it's the last page of the book. I have goosebumps all down my arms. Okay, it's the last story in the book. It's one page. And I would like to end on this note. It's a story about a piano. German pianist Andreas Schiff concluded his performance of Bach's French suites to thunderous applause at the San Francisco Symphony. I noticed the man next to me. He had come alone. He was smiling warmly and clapping. "What did you think?" I asked him. "Tremendous," he replied. "I've downloaded his performances and I've listened to his records for years, but this, to be here where the strings vibrate in your chest, where you can experience his hands flutter over the keys as he plays for 3 hours straight from memory with his eyes closed. This is to see something with soul in it." "Wow," I said. "You must be a pianist?" "Who, me?" he said. "No, I can't play a tune, but I often have a dream where I can." Thanks.